Good morning, small group leaders, or afternoon, whenever you're watching this. Hey, I just want to take a second and say, one, thank you so much for just being here and being willing to serve. We had 120 students the first week and 150 this last week at our back school bash. And I think we're going to end up sitting right around that number for the entire year. And it's going to take all of you guys to help make this possible and pull this off, because I can't do this alone. And so something I want to talk about today to help make this possible and help make each student that walks in feel cared for and known is this idea of learning to connect with students. Now, this is part of why we're here. I say that the best way that you can win in a small group is connection and growth. So those are our two goals. We want to connect with the students, and then through our connection and through our relationship with them, we want to help them grow. Now, we talked about building a group culture, and I think a healthy group culture will allow you to build connection with your students so people don't feel insulted or bullied. And it'll also help that opportunity for growth, because you can use that culture to help challenge your students and encourage them to be leaders and love people and make a difference. So most of our videos before then have been about culture, but what I really want to talk about today is connection. Now, part of me just assumed that everyone knows how to connect with students because you're serving with students and you want to help out, but I realized that maybe there's tips and tricks that we could all benefit from if we're intentional about connecting with students. Not just showing up and going like, I hope I hear someone's story this week, but actually before we get to group, understanding that there's a strategy to showing up and connecting with students in a way that we can help them hopefully feel known, uncross arms, and that we can help them open up in our groups and grow. So I'm going to talk about two different scenarios to connect with students. The first is connecting with a group. Now, connecting with a group and connecting with an individual might be different. Like, for example, if you are connecting with a group has a certain feel to it. It has a way of acting. It has its own subculture. It has its interests. Like, for example, the freshman girls group, who is kind of the more like bubbly sports personalities, they're going to be interested in very different things than a high school boys group interested in sports, or a sixth grade boys group interested in video games, or whatever it might be. So what you as leaders need to do is be able to match the energy or the interest of your group. And here's what I mean by that. So something that I try and do every time I go into, I just think of them because they're the easy example, but when I go into the freshman girls group, I am not wired a lot like a freshman girl, obviously, but I know that they're interested in, some of what's happening at school and who's talking to who and who's doing what. And so, I'll kind of jokingly go with them and I'll be like, all right, what's the tea, what's the hot gossip? What's going on? Tell me about, what's happening at school. And I'll even be dramatic with them because they think it's funny, and I give myself a target to be made fun of, versus when I go into like the high school boys group, I'm asking them about sports accomplishments and weight room and challenging them to stuff, and kind of like making fun little jabs at them. In sixth grade boys group, I'll ask about video games, or even a lot of times like sixth, seventh, and eighth graders like to talk about their family more than high schoolers do. So you find something that the group kind of gels over, and you got to match that energy. And this is also important knowing, like, if you have a group that is really excited and rambunctious, you might want to be like, okay, guys, like, talk to me about what's going on, and try and use that energy to be constructive. But you also might have a group that's a little more quiet, introverted, and you come and you're like, hey, everybody, how's it going? They might be like, whoa. And so just kind of meeting them where they're at. And two, like, you might have a group that doesn't really know Jesus all that much. And if you come in with like, yeah, Jesus is awesome, we should pray every day and read our Bibles, they might be like, we're still on square one, like we want to know why we should follow him. So if they're still trying to figure out why they should follow Jesus, and you're talking about, like making sure you get up at 5:30 a.m. to read your Bible every morning because that's time of Jesus, like, you have to be able to understand where your group is at to best meet them for that connection piece. So I'm not asking you to change yourselves at all. Please don't hear me say that. You don't adapt to your group and go, well, I just got to change who I am. You're not being a chameleon, but it is understanding, like Paul says, I become all things to all people so that I might win some. So we want to meet people where they're at. So still be you, be very genuine, don't change your personality, but understand how you can adapt who you are to fit what your group needs as much as possible. So again, don't change you, but notice what the group needs and try and be aware of that and meet them where they're at. And the second thing is this. And this is connecting with individuals. Most of you know how to connect with individuals. You've been doing it your whole life. But when it comes to students, I just want to give you practical questions that I ask students every time I meet them. I ask them name, grade, school, and if they do any hobbies or activities. But a lot of times that can only get you so far. And I also want to make a note and say if you have a student that is like just clearly doesn't want to talk and they're answering all those like fine, whatever, yeah, you can't make a student connect with you that doesn't want to connect with you. So sometimes you'll run into that, and that's unfortunate. But a lot of times, the students who come actually do want to connect and they want to get to know their leaders. So those 4 questions kind of help a base point, and then you can go like, what are you interested in? Do you like video games? But sometimes those questions can still only get you so far. Like you might find that you don't have a lot of connection with this student and you're trying to find things like, what do you do? What are your hobbies? They're like, I don't know, I like to hang out with my friends. And so you're trying to struggle through this. So I always ask questions that are kind of universal that help students like smile and laugh a little bit and talk about their interests. Like we all, or I'm pretty sure all of us, like music. So you ask them questions about, hey, what kind of music do you listen to? And they'll start hopefully talking to you about that. Or you might ask them, hey, you watch any good TV shows or movies recently? Because we all are watching TV shows and movies and have things that we like, and so it gives you a chance to talk to students about that. Or are you playing video games or whatever? Just these things that are more broad categories will help you have that starting point so that when a student comes into you and meets you for the first time, that they feel like there's some common connection with you so that when it gets to group time, they're more willing to uncross their arms and connect with you. So that's the goal, is to connect with students, meet the group where they're at, try and fill that need where you feel like what the group needs for connection, try and be that piece for them, and drawing out connection within you and the group. And then as far as individuals go, it's just always being ready to have questions prepped. You can even ask, like, what are some good conversational questions for meeting someone for the first time? I've Googled that before. I know it sounds robotic, but I've Googled that, and I just keep a couple of those in my back pocket. That way, if I'm in a conversation with a student and things feel like they're going nowhere, I can ask one of those questions. I'm like, hey, if you could put together a concert and you could have 3 bands perform, who would you have be there? And I'm like, and one of the bands can no longer be in existence, so they got to think back to like an old band and then 2 people they really like, and it's just kind of a fun. There's questions like that you can ask to engage students and make them more willing to open up. So hope that helps, and I hope that we continue to build connection with students so that they are getting closer to you and closer to Jesus, and that they're growing each week that they show up. Thanks, guys.